Alright lads, welcome back to the channel. So I filmed this entire video yesterday, but when I finished recording after about an hour and a half, I put it into my editing software and realised that my microphone had been set to my headset mic and it sounded like absolute ass. So anyway, I wanted to throw my computer out the window last night, so I didn't get a video out then, but today I'm going to do it now. So obviously there's a big sale going on currently in War Thunder, and because I'm sad enough to own pretty much all these vehicles with a few exceptions, I thought I'd give you a little bit of my knowledge for what that's worth. Just bear in mind that I'm not a top tier realistic player anymore, because I really don't like the missile meta, so to speak. So my insight isn't probably going to the best. You might want to check out Seek Ahead or Defiance or any of the other fantastic realistic content creators in the War Thunder community. That being said, let's jump into the M1A1 clickbait. This is £30 sterling. So the clickbait sits at rank 7 at battle rating 11.3. It allows you to grind out every vehicle currently in the American tech tree, including rank 8. It's not an amazing tank, I'm going to be honest with you. It's not got the best armor, it's not got the best mobility. The gun's alright. It's pretty decent in a defensive position, but you have very limited ability to be offensive in this tank. It's one of the biggest criticisms I have with the American tech tree in general is that it kind of stops being good after 10.3, similar to the British tech tree. So there's not really any need, in my opinion, to get the clickbait. The top tier Abrams are absolutely god awful at the minute in the meta, and the global war on terror has kind of made them into absolute bloated kind of vehicles, which are mainly designed to defend against people in alleyways with RPGs, not peer-on-peer tank combat, which is obviously what War Thunder is. So while this tank is nowhere near it's not as good as something like the Leopard A1, which has just been added, or the Soviet T-80UE1. For £30, if you really want to get started in the American tech tree, it's not a bad choice at all. Next up we have the F4S Phantom 2. This is coming at £30. And just bear in mind, again, I'm not the best top tier jet player, and I haven't really played it in a while. But the F4S, it's a pretty decent plane. It has 2 AIM-9Hs, or at least in my loadout it does, as well as 5 AIM-7M, so a very good mix of semi-active and infrared homing. This is a missile bus pretty much. It's got a new lease of life with the battle rating changes. A lot of vehicles going from 12.3 or 12.7 up to 13.0 now. So you don't really see any of the big nasty jets that you used to see. You are still going to be going up against the F-14s with the quite buffed AM-54 Phoenixes, as well as the scurry MiG-23 ML Premium. But this plane is pretty decent. It's in F4J airframe, I think, and it also has the Colt 20mm gun instead of the Vulcan mounted in the nose. It's a pretty decent plane. It's not really sexy though. It's not really that fun to fly. It's kind of just a semi-active radar homing launch platform with some IR missiles basically welded onto the side of it. It's not really that fun to play. It's not the MiG-23 ML where you can kind of maneuver and actually feel like a pilot. This is just take off, lock enemy with radar, fire missile. You're probably better checking out, as I said, Seek or Define. They're probably more knowledgeable on pretty much every of the premium jets. But from my memory, the F4S, it was a decent plane, but it just wasn't really that fun to fly. Consistent and good at grinding and getting XP, but you're not really going to have a good time playing it. Speaking of which, we then have the MiG-23 ML. This is coming in again at £30. It's going to be £30 for a lot of these premiums, or near enough. Now the ML is a plane that I actually do not own because I already have quite a lot of the Soviet air tree and I just never really got around to buying it. It does have some very substantial weapons. You have the R60Ms, the all-aspect, quite short range infrared missiles, but you do also get the R24Rs and the R24Ts, if I'm not mistaken, yes. So you get the long-range radar missiles, although not as good as the R27s obviously, but still pretty potent for the battle rating. They also use some sort of radar guidance, which isn't really picked up usually on NATO RWRs, so most of the time enemies won't even know like what you are firing at them with the R24R. The R24T is also pretty good. It is the IR version of the R24, so it's quite long range, but it can be flurred if enemies are just like popping flurs over and over and over again. But for £30 is a pretty decent grinder. Again, this has been artificially buffed kind of with the battle rating increase to 13.0. You're not going up against like the... Well, you're still going up against, I guess, some of the earlier F15s, but the matchmaker is nowhere near as harsh as it once was. Stuff like the F16Cs and the SG27s are no longer going to be facing you and stuff like that. So it's quite a good grinder. It's probably the most spammed out premium in RB from the last games that I've played. I have played RB quite really, but I don't really enjoy it. And it's just kind of like a top tier spam fest. No one really plays props anymore. Like Gaijin knows that most of the newer players are just coming for the modern tanks and the modern planes. That's why you've got so many top tier premiums now and not really any love for World War II stuff. Because Gaijin may as well just split the game off here, make it 2 separate games like Armoured Warfare type where it's just modern vehicles. Because literally no one wants to play this stuff anymore, at least none of the newer players. All the old veterans are still going strong, but most people are just skipping to top tier with a premium. And the MiG-23ML is a good choice for doing that, as it is quite, it's probably the most meta premium at top tier currently in War Thunder. But then move on to the Frenchy boys, the Mirage F1C. This is a plane that I do actually own. So the Mirage got a flight model buff quite a few months ago, and the Magic 2 IR missiles that it gets are also incredibly good. These are all aspect IRCCM capable, rather short range, but still incredibly deadly IR missiles with 35 Gs of maximum overload. You do also have the 530Fs. I'm not sure whether these are pulse or constant wave, but I think they are pretty decent. They're not really that meta though compared to stuff like the AIM-7M, and especially not compared to the R27ER or regular R. But they're pretty usable at medium ranges. They're nowhere near as long range as the previous 2 missiles, but they are usable. Do also have rockets and bombs, as well as a CCIP, allowing you to drop them accurately, both in air realistic and ground realistic if you choose to use it in that manner. For £30, it's a pretty decent premium. When it was first introduced, it kind of got slated as this was pretty much flew like a boat. But again, it did have a flight model rework, and it is pretty fun to fly now. Then move on to the old bad boy, the Leopard 2A4, again coming in slightly less than £30 actually, at £27.50, probably around $33 or 33 euros, sorry. This tank also got a new skin added recently, and it gives you kind of like a cool urban desert rug. I don't really know what this is supposed to be, but it looks kind of cool. This is like the gold standard at 10.3. Every other tank or every other premium is based off the Leopard 2A4. It's fast, fairly well protected, with a good gun, with a fairly decent round as well. It also has first gen thermals. Nothing about this tank is really exceptional, but it doesn't really have any faults. Because of that, I'd say that this is well worth the money. It also has a fantastic lineup at 10.3. You have loads of just random other stuff. The Vilcas, the Weasel is incredibly good. The regular Tetri 2A4, 2K, Puma, Radkampfwagen, and the TAM 2C, all fantastic vehicles. You do also have the Leopard 2A4M, which was just added. But if you don't have the income to fork out $70 or $80, whatever it is now for these 11.3 premiums, then the Leopard 2 Panzer Battalion 123 is more than good enough. As I said, the Leopard 2 Panzer Battalion 123 and the Swedish Christian 2 are the gold standard 10.3 premiums, which every other premium is judged on. So well worth the money in my opinion, both for the German and the Swedish Panzer Battalion 123 clones. I'm getting mixed up. I've been drinking a little bit tonight to cope with the pain of War Thunder. Moving on, we have the Sab G35XS. This was a Finnish modernization, I believe, coming in for £30. I do own this plane, but I've only played it 6 matches, I believe, so not really the most experienced playing it. It does get 6 AIM-9Js, and when this plane was first introduced, it was a lot of fun. The AIM-9Js were very meta, and you did also have the IRST here, which allowed you to slave the IR missiles without giving the enemy like a radar lock, which you usually get with like a radar slaved missile. It's not been too good in the meta recently. While this plane is very agile, you do bleed your speed a lot. I believe they did a flight model rework to it where it kind of lost a lot of its thrust or something like that. It also gets only 12 countermeasures, which is still usable, especially at this lower battle rating of 10.7. I'd say it's kind of worth it, especially considering it does get a CCIP for the rockets. This does allow you to use the fantastic M56Ds with the 500mm high explosive anti-tank warhead. The only downside though, again, is a battle rating of 10.7, whereas the Swedish lineup at, well, near top tier is 10.3. You don't have any 10.7 vehicles, but you could use it at 11.7 or 11.3, but obviously it is a little bit limited at those top tiers. But for the money, it's well worth it if you want to. Well, it's decent, it's not exceptional, it's certainly usable, but it is a little bit, it's a very high skill ceiling if you get what I mean. We then move on to the bad boy, the T-72AV Terms. This used to be by far the most overpowered premium in War Thunder until like the Panzer Battalion 123 was introduced. This is a Syrian one-off upgrade, I think, of the T-72A. The T-72A was the first T-72 variant which got the composite armor add-on scheme in the turret. Beforehand, it was only the T-64Bs that got it, with the original T-72U, the Ural, only having a cast steel turret, similar to the T-62. That doesn't matter in War Thunder, but I thought I'd just share some knowledge with you. So if you look in the tech tree, the regular T-72A is battle rating 9.3, and only comes armed with the 3BM 22 round. The T-72AV Terms, the V meaning you get the Contact 1 explosive reactive armor. If you ever look at a Russian tank and it has a V in the name, at least the modern main battle tanks, it denotes basically it's been plastered with explosive reactive armor bricks basically. But the T-72AV Terms does get the 3BM 42 Mango round. It also gets 3rd gen thermals for the gunner and the commander's sights, and that is essentially the only modernizations. But these modernizations are incredibly powerful. You have a fantastic fire control system and a very powerful round for the battle rating of 10.0. Because of the battle rating of 10.0, you never get put into games in the new emerging 11.3 meta. So this is a very, very popular but very, very sweaty battle rating. 10.0. It's very, very good. I'd recommend getting the T-72AV Terms. It's a decent tank. It gets you introduced to the Soviet playstyle of the main battle tanks. A lot of firepower, but pretty bad gun handling and very poor reverse speeds. It's a staple of this. This thing and the Panzer Battalion 123 are like the two brothers at top tier, or top tier premiums at least. It's well worth the money in my opinion. But then move on to the CV90-105. With the introduction of the Christian 2 recently, the CV90-105 has kind of been replaced or subplaced by the Leopard 2A4 variant. But the CV90-105, it's strong in all the ways that the Christian 2 is weak. So this thing is incredibly fast. It has a autoloader with a 5-second rate of fire. It also gets the DM33 main shell, which is substantially more powerful than the Christian 2's DM23. It also has 3rd gen thermal imagers for the gunner and the commander sights, as well as the kind of mediocre Falararik 105, I guess that's called. But every way that the Christian is weak, the CV90-105 is strong. So like me, if you're sad enough and have the poor financial or poor fiscal management like me, and bought them both, you basically have the best of both worlds. But for the money of $30 or whatever it is, you can't complain about this tank. It's a fantastic little vehicle. The survivability is abysmal, but what do you expect from a light tank? As I said, if you already have the Christian 2 and you only bought one, then now is probably the time to get the CV90-105, as I think I saw something about it being removed from the store recently, but I could be wrong on that. But then move on to the Tornado IDS. This is a plane that I do not personally own. The reason for me not owning this plane is already quite apparent to me. It is a bomber at top tier with no real ability to project power. It does get 2 AIM-9Ls and just dumb bombs. It doesn't even get like any precision strike weapons, or doesn't get a T-pod or like guided bombs or anything like that. So you can't even use it in ground realistic battles, similar to how you'd use, say, the A6E tram. So I don't really see a point in buying this thing whatsoever, and you probably just should save your money. It is a shame though, because the Tornado is legitimately the coolest Cold War jet. Just a shame that in War Thunder they gave it way too high of a battle rating. Just take the AIM-9Ls off this and put it at 10.0. It'd be a lot better. We then have the Su-25K pack. The same way the T-72 AV Terms is a staple of the Soviet ground forces, the Su-25K is a staple of the air forces. It comes equipped with quite a wide array of weapons, but by far the best choice are the 8 S-25-0 rockets. These basically have a 62 kilogram high explosive warhead, which will kill any vehicle, literally any vehicle in the game with a direct hit. And because you get the CCIP for the commander, not for the pilot, sorry, and you get it for the rockets, bombs, and guns, and pretty much everything else you have, this is by far the deadliest CAS at battle rating 10.0, and it's even deadly at top tier as well. So this is by far, well, it's an easy yes for me to recommend to people if you do want to be a menace in ground realistic battles. You will be absolutely despised and you will get hate messages sent to you every time you play this vehicle, but it is much better than pretty much anything else that you have, and it's just reliable in pretty much everywhere you could want to play in, and it's got a fantastic lineup as well. Not really that good in air realistic, I can tell you that for sure, because it's subsonic and not really that. It's not got the ability to get to bases to bomb them, considering every other jet would probably be supersonic or near supersonic. But it does get all aspect missiles, the R60s, but it's not particularly good in air realistic. This is by far a dominant beast in ground realistic. We then have the Su-25K's, I guess, brother from another mother or rival from across the pond, the A-10A. The A-10A in the American territory is also located at battle rating 10.0, but is nowhere near good enough to be in the 10.3 lineup in my opinion. So I usually use the F111A Aardvark in my 10.3 lineup, as this thing gets 4 3,000 pound bombs. It's also supersonic. It's basically better in every single way you could imagine. The A-10A does get 2 AIM-9L missiles mounted on the outer pylons, and you can carry the 2,000 pound demo bomb, which does give you a pretty large amount of explosive, but at this point is subsonic, not very survivable, and considering that the Soviets also get the Strela 10 M2 at 10.3, which will shoot you down before you get even close to the battlefield, the A-10As are basically a joke in War Thunder. They don't do anything good. Even the A-10A late is pretty much a waste of space. Until Guardian add the A-10C, which gets more advanced Mavericks and more advanced fire control things, the A-10s are pretty lame in my opinion. Combined with the fact that you have to take you have to pay more spawn points to take out the DU belts or the Sabo belts. It's not even worth taking the A-10A, so don't even buy this. Then have the F5C. This is coming in at £27.50, around $30. This is another American jet. It used to be incredibly good when I used to play it. It's got two AIM-9Es, which isn't amazing, but it's got pretty good energy retention as long as you aren't doing unnecessary turns. Again, you're probably better going to one of the realistic War Thunder creators for a more modern update, because I haven't played this in quite a few months, but it was pretty decent at the time. You got those 2 good 20mm cannons, which very high velocity, very easy to aim, very good for short dogfights. Its sustained energy rate isn't very good. Once you lose your energy, the engines aren't particularly powerful enough to get that energy back in a good amount of time. But if you keep your energy up, it's a decent little fighter. We then have the M1 KVT, it's only been out quite a few months. It's not that old, but it has been put on sale for £27, $30-ish. This is part of the fairly decent 10.3 American lineup, This is basically a visualization modification, which I don't have equipped at the minute. I would actually unequip this if I was you, because the gun cannot swing behind these. It's not really going to be an issue in 90% of the games, but I'd rather have nothing there in case someone is behind me. In the rare case I can shoot them. It's only armed with the M735. It's armed with the M774. It must be sleepwalking. It's this thing that's only got M735. So the M1 KVT is a decent tank. It's fairly fast. It does get the Chobham armor, but it's very, very thin compared to the later Abrams. It's a decent premium, but it's not very fun to play. It's kind of like the F4S. It's just not very glamorous in my opinion. I'm not a massive fan of this. When I take out the 10.3 American lineup, I usually take out the Wolfpack or like the Leopard and just use this thing as a light tank really, and just spam people with the 25mm Gao or even the M3A3 Chadley. So the M1 KVT, it's a decent vehicle, but I just don't really enjoy playing it. But for the price of £30, it's probably a lot better than the M1 A1 clickbait. Maybe not in terms of longevity, but I think you'd probably have a bit more fun playing the M1 KVT. The clickbait is just suffering in my opinion, especially because it's so sweaty now at top tier. You kind of have to be on your game every single... I guess that's true for every game, but I think the M1 KVT at 10.3 is probably a little bit more new player friendly. We then have the Black Shark. This is a very old premium, absolutely hated when it was first introduced and for a good few years afterwards as well. It's coming in for £22. So if you want to grind out the Soviet Airtech tree, I'd just recommend clicking the research helicopters by playing ground vehicles. There's no point buying premium helicopters really, unless you just want to skip the grind altogether. As you can see, I suffered through it. So yeah, I don't really think there's much point buying the KA50. It's been moved up to battle rating 11.0. It originally came to the game as 10.0, which was insane. Gaijin finally saw sense and increased its battle rating, and now most people are just going to use the KA52. Then come on to the Challenger DS. This is actually a rare British W, a very good vehicle indeed. So the Challenger DS, it stands for Desert Storm. I have a woodland camouflage on it at the minute. It's basically a Challenger Mark III, but basically a copy and paste. This gets the L26 round. It's very, very good with 471mm of penetration. Basically the equivalent of the Soviet 3BM42 Mango. This is basically as good as it gets for the British top tier lineup. 10.3 is where you want to stop grinding. Everything past 10.3 is just a waste of your time, including the Challenger, all of them. The Challenger 3 recently got its engine nerfed, but it lost 300 horsepower, so it's gone down to 1,200 once again, so it's absolutely abysmal to play. So 10.3 is really where you want to stop grind, and you don't want to go above 10.3 in both the American and the British tech trees. Like the M1 KVT, this tank does get the Chobham armor, which does make it very effective hull down and against high explosive anti-tank warheads. The problem, as you can see, is that there's massive holes in the armor scheme with the driver's port and the lower frontal plate. In real life, this would be covered up when it went into war, but Gaijin seemed not to have taken that into effect for some reason. So I'm pretty sure the Challenger Mark III does get it, yeah, but for some reason the DS doesn't. I don't know, ask Gaijin. They're not particularly got their heads screwed on. But this is probably one of the best premiums in the British tech tree. It's mobile enough to get to a defensive position and basically just camp for the game. The rate of fire is pretty good with 5.7 rounds a minute or 5.7 second reload or something like that. It's got a decent gun, it's got a good reload, it's got good turret armor if you hold down. It's probably just as good as the Vickers Mark 7, the Challenger Mark 1, the Bishma. As you can see, it's got a very, very good lineup in my opinion. The new Desert Warrior, which isn't particularly that much better than the original Warrior, but is like 2 battle ratings higher for some reason. You also have the DM33 Flinging VFM5, the Ruicat, Stormer, Geolynx, Jaguar GR1. It's a very good premium. If you're interested in playing the British top tier, or you want to grind out Britain in general, then the Challenger DS is a fantastic pickup in my opinion. We then have the SG39. I'd just go out and say don't bother buying this. It's £30 when the SG25K is £25, so you could save yourself a fiver. You can go and buy some chips and fish. The SG25K is a low battle rating, carries basically the exact same weapons. The SG39 does have the more advanced Vickers missiles, but if you're flying high and slow, you're going to get absolutely clapped by top tier air defense. So there's literally no point buying this vehicle. It's worse in air realistic, it's worse in air tank battles, so don't even bother buying this. Then move on to the Kafir Canard. This is £30 British. This is a plane that I've played quite a bit, but I haven't really mastered it. I basically was just using it as a bomb truck at the start of a match, dropping my bombs on an air base and then going after like A10s or SG25s. It does get 2 AIM-9Gs, I believe. Or AIM-9Gs, sorry. So basically the US Navy's Sidewinders. It's a pretty decent vehicle. I do like it. It's got a very high thrust to weight ratio. It doesn't have any sort of radar. It gets a radar rangefinder though, which does piss your teammates off at the start of a match as it gives them a constant lock. But it does get a CCIP for the rockets, bombs and cannon. You can use this as a ground strike vehicle if you really wanted to, but it doesn't get any sort of precision guided bombs, or you can't really carry enough rockets to rocket a base and that sort of stuff. But it's a good pickup, especially if you want to grind out the Israeli tech tree. Then have the Type 96A prototype. This is a ZTZ 96A for £28. This fits very well into the 10.0 lineup, as you can imagine. With the recent addition of the ZBD04A, it makes the lineup pretty decent now, especially with my little friends chilling. So the ZT6 96A, this is a tech tree vehicle. It is here, the ZT6 96A. Gaijin gave me these, don't freak out. It's a decent vehicle. It's fairly fast. It's got decent armor protection. It's got explosive reactor armor blocks as well, which give you a buff to chemical and kinetic, which is quite rare for 10.0. It does have quite a big weak spot in the form of this big hole here in the gun breech. I don't know why the Chinese designed it like that, but they did. It also gets the Chinese rip-off Storer, which it's only really going to protect you from TOW missiles, which granted is a bit of a threat at 10.0. You've got quite a lot of vehicles which do use them. The main party trick though is going to be the gun. It's a T-72 type autoloader, so the Ural Vonzagod, or whatever you pronounce it, is that type of cassette, or I can't really remember, of its cylinder. It's the one where they're both lying on the backs. It's going to be a reload of 7.1 seconds, which is a little bit slow at this battle rating, especially with stuff like the Leopard 2s firing every 6 seconds and that sort of stuff. The 1985 APFS DSO is alright, 466mm of penetration, not quite as good as the L26 found on the British gun, but still more than good enough. You do also get very good mobility and second gen thermal imager for the gunner and the commander's sight, which does make it a very formidable vehicle, and it's quite rare for having second gen thermals at a low battle rating of 10.0. Downside though is it's not got the most amount of backup vehicles. You've got the tech tree one, obviously, the new ZBD. You have this piece of junk if you get it in that event that they did. But then you're kind of out of backup vehicles, and it's the same thing for CAS as well, unless you have the premium A5C, which we'll look at shortly. The more emerging meta though is the MBT 2000 at 10.7, as well as the two ZTZ 99s. 10.7 is a very slept on battle rating at the minute, and all three of these tanks are incredibly good, but no one really seems to play them. We then have the MiG-21 base, the Laser M. This is a upgrade or modernization of the radar, I believe, or something like that. Again, it's coming in at £30 British. This is another plane that I do not own, mainly because it's a MiG-21 and I'm fed up of grinding out like 4 MiG-21 bisses now. And I don't really have any reason to pick up the German. The German air tree is pretty much dead. There's no reason to play any of these. There's much better equivalents in the other tech trees. And don't even get me started on this piece of junk. So yeah, I don't really know how good this plane is. It is just a copy and paste of the MiG-21 bis. Guess it's not the bis SAO, it's some sort of bis. But it's got 6 all-aspect IR missiles. As well, you can take out the R3Rs, I guess. Or the R3S, whatever you really want. The 6 R60MKs are going to be your best bet. But at 11.0, you're kind of outmatched. Especially considering you're going up against with semi-active radar homing, and there's not really any way you can hide anymore with the multipath changes, so I would give this a miss in my opinion. Again, that is my pure speculation. I haven't really played Realistic in, well, I haven't played that plane obviously, so I can't really comment. We then have the F104S, the Turkish Air Force variant. This again is £30 British. So this is coming in at battle rating 11.0, which means it doesn't have any lineup in ground realistic really, because you go from 10.3 straight up to 11.7. So it's kind of only really useful in realistic. I use it basically the exact same way as I use the Kafir Canard as a bomb truck at the start of a match. You can carry a substantial amount of bombs, about, I think it's 5,500 pounds of bombs. It's more than enough to destroy a base. You can also take AIM-9Ps. You can choose between 4 and bombs or 6. if you want to take rather clean wings, you can take the the AIM-7Es if you really want to, but just bear in mind that you do lose the 20mm rotary cannon. It's quite a hard plane to fly, really. You can't really stay low and dodge incoming semi-active radar homing missiles as you are a flying pencil. The AMX A1A is looking to be a better premium, but again, I haven't really took this one out into a match yet. This thing isn't really any better in ground realistic. Again, at 10.7, you don't have a lineup unless you use the KF41 links, which is absolutely shit. So you should just stay at 10.3 in my opinion, but that's just me. I can't really give you an opinion on this thing. I have played 9 games in it, so not the most skilled or experienced player in it. I did have quite a few of high kill games. The 6 AIM-9Ps used to be a monster, especially when you could just take off, climb high, then come down on top of people, but I think that meta is long gone in realistic. We then have the F4 EJ Phantom 2. This is the old bomb and missile truck, again coming in at £30 British. This is a vehicle that I may pick up actually in this sale because it is just going to make it easier for me to grind out the F-15Js. I kind of gave up grinding the F-15. I got the one in the Israeli tech tree and the one in the American one and kind of just said I can't be arsed with this one. Despite it being basically, I've only got 2 points that I don't have in the Japanese tech tree. I guess I've not got them, but they were introduced recently. But yeah, it's basically just a bomb and missile truck. It only gets the AIM-7Es, which are very not in meta, shall we say. These aren't even the AIM-7E dogfights. They are basically the same missiles that were found on the original F4E when that thing was added quite a few years ago now. But it does get a healthy amount of Mighty Mouse, Zuni, and a selection of bombs as well. You can just use this for flying out and spamming missiles at bases, but I think they did patch that. I don't think you get as much XP anymore. But as again, I've not played it in a while. I haven't bought this premium, so I don't really know. The only thing about this is its battle rating 11.0, and as we'll see, the F4 in the British tech tree is 11.3, which means it gets absolutely dicked on. Anyway, let's take a look at our next vehicle. So up next we have the AH-64A Apache. This is the Greek version of the Apache. Like the Soviet helicopters, I'd recommend using the research of helicopters by playing ground vehicles instead of actually buying a vehicle. The AH-64A Greece is basically a copy and paste of the P-10 as well as the AH-64A in the tech tree. It gets 16 AGM-111, AGM-114B Hellfires. These do not have the tandem warhead found on the AGM-114Ks, but they're still good enough. Still get second gen thermal images for the gunner sight. It's a decent helicopter, but you better just grinding it out by actually playing tanks, as you don't really want to be. I guess you could just buy it to skip. It's quite a big grind to get all this, I'm not going to lie. So it might be better just buying it if you are interested in helicopters. But with all the modern CAS now, especially the Panzer, helicopters are pretty much dead in the ground realistic meta. So you probably better just stick into fast jet CAS rather than helicopter CAS. Then have the T-55 AM1, the old monster of the Soviet tech tree. This is coming in at £25. It is an absolute bargain. I would 100% say buy it. So the T-55 AM was basically modernized in, I think it was the 90s, probably the 80s, something like that. You got the Ilyich eyebrows, or however you pronounce it, basically armor add-on. It's bolted, well, I guess it's welded onto attachments on the turret cheeks, as well as the whole front here. This basically makes the tank immune at point blank range against its own gun, the 3BM25, which is pretty impressive. I think if I remember correctly from my research, this armor add-on gave it the same protection as the T-72A. I could be wrong on that, but I think it is a very respectable amount of armor, especially considering the T-72A is battle rating 9.3, whereas this is 11.7. Obviously, it is just a T-55, so it's basically just a T-54 with a nuclear, biological, chemical kit. So it's pretty antiquated, but it does have a good level of survivability. It does get a good gun with a fantastic nuke shell, the BR-412D, and you do get the 3BM25 if you really want to use a saber round, but I think it is better using the APCBC round, as you get lots of one-shot kills. At 8.7, you have the fantastic lineup as well. You have the BMP2, the T64 prototype kind of, the AMD with the Drozd, the Shilka, I guess. It's not really the best thing in the world, but IT1, Sturm, Mi-24D, 685. Fantastic vehicle in a fantastic lineup. Another slept-on lineup. I guess it's not really slept on. A lot of people know about this, but most people are just playing 10.3 and upwards now in War Thunder, whereas this is still an absolute beast. We then have the A5C. This again is in the Chinese tech tree. It's coming in at rank 6 at battle rating 10.0. So this is very much a fantastic ground attack plane. It used to be an absolute monster in realistic, as well as it could climb very high at the start of a match and basically come down on top of people. It's got fantastic air-to-ground rockets, fantastic bomb load, and fantastic IR missiles as well. Bear in mind, this does also have CCIP for the cannons, rockets, and the bombs, so you can drop all of your weapon systems incredibly accurately. It's based off a MiG-19 variant, giving it very good power-to-weight ratio and energy retention, but not the best in terms of actual maneuverability. This plane will lock up very easily at high speeds, which is a bit of an issue for a close air support plane, because you try and go on a bomb run or a rocket run and you will not be able to pull out of certain dives at high speeds. So just bear that in mind before you try and revenge bomb people, as you are almost certainly going to lawn dart into the nearest building that you see. But apart from that, it's a fantastic vehicle, fantastic Type 130-2 rockets, high explosive rockets with 58mm of penetration. You have 750-pound bombs as well, both normal and parachute retarded bombs. You also get the AIM-9P as well as the Magic 1. Fantastic rear aspects. It doesn't have IRCCM, but it is absolutely lethal within a range of about 2 kilometers, with its 35 Gs of maximum overload. So I'd say it's well worth it if you're going to grind out the Chinese tech tree. The ZTZ-96A and the A5C are absolute beasts at 10.0, and again you can use this at 10.7 as it is still a incredibly good vehicle. Alright boys, we're almost at the end. So we're going on to the A6E Intruder, the Tram. The A6E is one of the many 10.3 battle rating American premiums. This is basically a twin cockpit all-weather ground attack plane. It gets a internally mounted targeting pod here located underneath the nose of the plane, which has very decent resolution thermals actually. It can take a wide array of weapons. Just bear in mind that this plane does not have an internally mounted gun, meaning that you will have to take a gun pod if you want some close range protection. It can also carry the AIM-9L, an all-aspect missile found on the A-10s, as well as several other American planes. Can also take chaff pods, as well as rockets, Zunis, napalm if you go into Vietnam, normal and drag retarded bombs as well. Your best pick though is either going to be the GBU-10s, which are very large laser guided bombs with nearly 600 kilos of TNT, or the very recently introduced AGM-123 skipjacks. These are basically rocket assisted bombs. They don't really increase the range of the GBUs that much, but they do decrease the time it takes for launch and then to hit, allowing you to pop up, fire, hit, and then go back into cover. It's basically a little bit of a buff to the A6E Tram. Gaijin's probably going to increase the battle rating of this to 10.3. How it's already gone up to 10.7. Look at that. It's 10.7 in ground realistic, which means it's absolutely useless in the 10.7 lineup, in the 10.3 lineup. Gaijin just don't give us a break. Look at that. How to ruin a vehicle in one fell swoop. Give it a negligible buff. Okay, so don't buy that plane. We're not buying the A6E anymore because Gaijin have increased its battle rating for no valid reason whatsoever. We then have the F4J Junk. Just don't buy this. I'm not even going to waste my time going into the actual game and showing you. Don't buy that. Then I have the J7D. It's coming in at £30. So the J7D was seen as a replacement for the A5C in terms of the premium. It didn't really live up to its expectations. I believe that this uses the airframe of a more modern MiG-21, but still uses an older engine, giving it rather lackluster power to weight or thrust to weight ratio. So in terms of its air to air performance, it's not very good. It is armed with rather good missiles though, the PL7 and the PL5Bs. These are very close range but high, well they're basically the magic ones found on the A5C. So these are short range missiles with incredibly good maneuverability, 35 Gs of maximum overload. But the PL5Bs are more long range with less agility, but they have a very high top speed, giving them fantastic range. So it's kind of a mixed bag of which you want to take. The PL5Bs used to be the meta when I was playing around this, but yeah, I haven't bought this plane because I can't be bothered playing top tier anymore. So I can't remember whether the PL7 or the PL5B is the meta at the minute. Again, consult some of the more, well, better than me in terms of realistic gameplay. Quite a lot of them about. But I wouldn't really recommend this plane. I'd get as far as you can using the A5C and then just doing something. Put a talisman on the J7E or the F5E. It's up to you. I wouldn't recommend getting the J7D though. A vehicle that I can highly recommend is the Type 16 FPS. This is coming in at £25, which is an absolute bargain, and I would definitely recommend you picking this up. The Type 16 is located at battle rating 9.3 in rank 6, which is a bit of a downside as it can't be used to grind basically these two vehicles here, but you can still use it to grind out pretty much everything in the Japanese tech tree apart from two vehicles. It's also incredibly fast. If I can find it, that's the right vehicle. It's incredibly fast due to its 8x8 vehicle chassis. It has a high resolution thermal imager for the gunner and the commander sight. It has a fairly fast firing gun, I believe it's 6.7 seconds, so you're a little bit faster than the Soviet vehicles. Downside though is it does only have the M735 AP FSDS round, which is a little bit lackluster, but because of the fantastic thermal imager and top speed, you can get on the flanks of maps and just keep spotting people, giving you spawn points and helping out your teammates. And if an enemy exposes their weaker side, you can still finish them off with that M735. But for the price of £25, this is an absolute steal. I would highly recommend picking it up as it's incredibly fun to play as well. We then have the Leopard A1 L44, one of the oldest premiums currently on sale, along with the XM1 actually. So whereas the Leopard 2 Panzer Battalion 123 is the current meta, the old meta was definitely defined by the Leopard A1 L44. This thing used to be one of the only vehicles in the German tech tree which got a thermal imager, and of course it was a premium, with the tech tree version that had the 105mm gun not having a thermal imager, which was kind of the start of Gaijin's dodgy business practices. But that being said, at 9.3 this is long since pretty much dead in the meta. You're going to get up tier to 10.3 quite a lot, which is a very large jump in capabilities despite only being a 1.0 increase in battle rating. This tank basically has the exact same gun, literally, with better ammunition. It's more agile, more mobile, with better armor, better reload, better everything really. So it's not really worth it in my opinion. This thing only gets DM13 as well, which is it's a short rod penetrator basically, so it doesn't really have the best spalling and penetration either. So it's not really worth picking this up in my opinion. Just get the Leopard 2 Panzer Battalion 123. And to end the video, we have the XM1 General Motors. This was the version of the Abrams which didn't win. So the competition for America's next generation main battle tank was won obviously by Chrysler, which resulted in the M1 Abrams. But the General Motors entry was the XM1 GM, which had a diesel engine. Yes, diesel engine, not petrol. Don't think America uses petrol, at least for the tanks. Anyway, this is basically, again, kind of dead in the meta. It only has the M735 Sabre round. It doesn't have any smoke grenades or smoke grenade launchers. It doesn't even have any real armor to speak of, to be honest. It gets spaced armor in the hull and a little bit of Chobham armor in the turret, which it kind of limits the tank. Again, it's also battle rating 9.3. It does have a premium sight for the gunner, but it's just not particularly good anymore in the meta. I tend to take this out, as you can see in my 10.3 lineup, and basically just use it as a light tank. It's incredibly fast for its battle rating, but it doesn't have good survivability anymore. It doesn't really have an effective gun. Can't pop smoke to get out of there if you're in trouble. Because of that, if you only have the money to buy one of these premiums, I'd recommend getting the M1 KVT rather than the XM1, as you're just not going to have fun anymore, especially as seen as a lot of the up tiers are going to be very brutal. And 9.3, America just doesn't really have a good lineup at 9.3. You've got the XM1, you've got the MBT70, I guess, which kind of got nerfed again recently. Main gun round got nerfed, I think. Got the M60s, God forbid you ever need to spawn one of them, they are awful. There's basically no reason to play 9.3 America, it's absolutely dead in the meta. So yeah lads, that's this video over. Hopefully this video was recorded with the correct microphone. So yeah, hopefully I'm not going to go and drink myself into a coma if that's the case. But anyway lads, thank you very much for watching this ramble. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about some of these vehicles. Hopefully I've allowed you to make a more informed purchase. Don't be like me and don't give several £1,000s of your money to a rather questionable business practicing company. But then again, anyway, I don't really know what I'm saying now. I'm pretty tired. Anyway lads, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in my regular scheduled videos.